I'm Jesse Lubinsky.
I'm Donnie Piercy.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Heil, host of the Partial Credit Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 158 of the House of EdTech podcast, I'm going to solve your password management problems. I've got a House of EdTech VIP, and it's time to slow down. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Well, hello. Thanks for coming by the House of EdTech. I am so glad that you are making this podcast a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. So, this episode is being recorded and released around the end of my school year here in 2019-2020. And the world is a much different place than when I started this school year and when you started this current school year. Between health issues around the world and societal issues here in the United States, it's a different world. And I know that the world is always changing, as it tends to do. I'm a history teacher. I have studied history. At some point, you took a history class or two, and you also know that the world is ever evolving and ever changing. And that's a good thing, because you and I both know that a lot in this world can change, needs to change, should change. And I am all for the change that needs to happen, so that the words of people like Abraham Lincoln can ring true. The words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. can be realized. Black lives do matter. And it's not a political issue. That's why I'm not afraid to talk about it, because this has nothing to do with politics. I'm a human being. I care about other human beings. And for as long as I have been alive, which is now a little over 39 years, I've always accepted all people. I was raised to accept all people, and I'm going to continue to accept all people and treat people with dignity and respect. And I don't care what somebody looks like, what they sound like. I don't care about any of that. I care about people. And my personal stance is I'm going to continue to treat people with respect and kindness to the best of my ability. And if that's not something that you do or are willing to do to all people, you can still listen to this podcast, because I'm still going to provide you with, technology tips and recommendations and all those things that are going to help you be a better educator. But if you don't agree with what I think, and that makes you not want to listen to my podcast, okay, thank you for coming. See you. Never, I guess. There's no easier, nice way to put it. But it has been a few weeks since I released an episode live. The last episode that came your way was an appearance I had recently on the Home Gadget Geeks podcast, hosted by my pal and podcasting buddy Jim Cullison over at theaverageguy.tv. And I wanted to make sure that I put my thoughts in my podcast because, as I've said many times before, it's my show and I will do what I want and say what I think and take it or leave it. You're getting me, the authentic, true me. I was just going to say my own name, but I am not cool enough to talk in the third person. But anyway, back to that episode of Home Gadget Geeks. I hope you enjoyed that. And if that podcast is something that interests you, Jim puts together a fantastic podcast, and he's been podcasting longer than me, and it's a great show. Again, I've been on it twice before this recent appearance, so maybe Home Gadget Geeks is something you want to add to your podcast catcher. And Jim does record his podcast live on Thursday nights, so definitely go and check out averageguy.tv. Go check Jim out on Twitter. He is at jcollison, and there'll be links to all of that out in the show notes. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation about education. And the reason I included that episode is because at the point where I would have released an episode of this podcast and like tried to put together an EdTech thought about current events and education and all the different things, Jim gave me the opportunity to come onto his show and talk about it for a whole lot longer. So it was a lot of fun. And, thank you to Jim for letting me come onto his podcast. And it was my pleasure to send it your way as well as a listener of this podcast. So there you go. Let's move on with this episode of the show. I got a great recommendation, which we are going to do right now. And then I've got my featured content, and we're going to talk about just give it a try, something really cool in the Twitterverse that I'm going to be sharing with you before the end of this episode. And of course, we've got the House of EdTech VIP, and then we will get you out of here before I see you in July. So on with the show. So for this episode's recommendation, I'm going to kind of go against my friend Derek Larson, who has been a guest on the podcast a couple of times. He's also been a big-time contributor for the end-of-year episode where we do the House of EdTech Smackdown in December. And I'm going to kind of go against Derek's recommendation. So I'm sorry, Derek, but I found something better than LastPass. And it's called Bitwarden. Bitwarden. Bitwarden is a password manager, which you can find at bitwarden.com. And according to their website, and as I am now learning, Bitwarden is the easiest and safest way for individuals, teams, and business organizations, which could be a school district, or maybe you have a side business that you do, or even just for personal use. It's a great way to store, share, and sync sensitive data like passwords. Now, we all watch the news, and password theft is a serious problem. The websites and apps that we use are constantly under attack. How many times have we seen big box store, insert name here, that their website gets hacked, or, things like that. So security breaches occur, and often it's our passwords that are stolen. There's a lot of websites out there where you can look yourself up when one of these breaches happens, and you can find out if your password or your user ID has been compromised. I know in the past, some of my accounts have been compromised, and I've had to go in and change my passwords. And when we reuse the same passwords everywhere, hackers can easily access our email, our bank accounts, and other accounts that we hold a lot of value on. So security experts recommend that you use a different randomly generated password for every online account that you create. But how are you supposed to remember and keep up with that many passwords? Some people keep a little notebook next to their computer, or maybe you keep a Google Keep note or some other electronic thing with all your passwords. But again, those are things that are not secure ways to manage your passwords and your accounts. Bitwarden Password Manager will help you create and manage secure passwords so that you can get back to enjoying your life online. You can install and sync Bitwarden on all of your devices. It works on iOS, it works on Android, it works on Mac, it works on Windows, it works in any browser that you can really think of, and you're probably only going to be thinking of Chrome or Edge or Firefox, and it works on more browsers than that. Their secure cloud syncing features allow you to access your data from anywhere on any device. Your vault is conveniently optimized for use on the desktop, a laptop, a tablet, and cell phones. And since all of your data is fully encrypted before it ever leaves your device, only you have access to it. Not even the people at Bitwarden can read your data, even if they wanted to. So again, it's desktop friendly, browser friendly, and mobile friendly. And if you wanted to switch over from something like LastPass, where maybe you're paying for it, you can use Bitwarden for free as an individual. Now, if you want access to larger scale features and kind of roll it out, again, to an organization, a school, or anything like that, that you'd have to pay for. But if you're just one person like me and you want to more easily manage your passwords, you might want to check out Bitwarden and consider switching from LastPass to Bitwarden, and they make it really easy to import your data. They got the browser plugins, they got the app for your phone. It's really cool, and I've been using it for about a month now, so I don't have any complaints or issues, and that's why I'm bringing you the recommendation here on the podcast. So if you're interested in changing up your password management tool, consider Bitwarden, again, Bitwarden, and go to bitwarden.com. Links will be out in the show notes at chrisnessy.com/158, and that's my EdTech recommendation. So school is out for the summer in many places. Here in New Jersey, as I record this episode, I'm about to finish my school year on Tuesday, June 3rd. Yeah, I wish. Tuesday, June 23rd. We've worked hard. You worked tremendously hard this year. I know that I busted my tail between September and right now. It has been a long, strange school year here in 2019-2020. Coronavirus and social distancing certainly derailed education for many people, including myself, including you. Whether you're an administrator or a classroom teacher, pre-K, college, the world of education was, I don't want to say turned upside down since around March of 2020. It was flipped upside down, kicked, rolled down a hill, tarred, feathered, just dragged through the street. I mean, education, it's an understatement to say education is going to look different when we come out the other side. So many states suspended state testing, teacher evaluations, parents were asked to teach, teachers were asked to parent and teach, and just so many things have impacted not only you and me as educators, but our students, our communities, and where we go from here is anybody's guess. But as I've said here, and I've said it on Podcast PD as well, if we're looking to go back to the way things were, we're making the wrong decision. If you are excited to get back to doing what you used to do in your school or in your classroom, you need to rethink that mindset. Or if you're not willing to rethink it, go find a different career or retire, because now is the time to make this change. A few days ago, I learned that already the state of Georgia has postponed state testing for the 2020-2021 school year and teacher evaluations for the 2021 school year, which prompted me to tweet out to the state of New Jersey, hey, let's get on board with this. Because, a college student of mine recently asked me a question about what do I love about teaching and education versus what do I guess, loathe or not like about education. And I can always easily answer a question like that because there's so many things I love about education. But when it comes to the things I don't love about education and teaching, it's all of the things, and I'm not going to list them off because you can come up with your own list. It's all of the things that you and I can think of that take away from what we love about teaching or being a principal or an assistant principal or an athletic director. It doesn't matter. But there's like the primary focus of your job. And then you and I both know all of the quote unquote other things that we have to deal with in our roles in education. And if we could eliminate those other things, life would be fantastic. So where do we go from here? Again, break is here. So the question is asked, now what? What do we do on summer vacation or between school years if you're, say, in a year-round school district? What do we do now? I got 2 words for you. Slow down. I might even throw in another option. Stop. Slow down. Stop. Put yourself back in driver's ed. Let's do a lesson on the yellow light. Most often, we see a yellow light. We speed up. We try to keep going. We fight through. We want to get through that intersection because we are in such a hurry that we feel we can't afford to slow down and stop. A recent edition of SatChat, hashtag SatChat for you if you're not familiar, the chat focused on summer plans and summer learning. That's great. You know, a lot of discussion came up about, you know, what you reflected on, what are you going to do this summer to continue to grow as an educator? You know, what book are you going to read? All these things. But let's get real for a second. We need to slow down and maybe stop. We talk about books, virtual events, summits, virtual conferences. We talk about relaxing. But what does relaxation look like? Do we need to just put out onto Twitter that we're going to be reading all these books, or I'll even say listening to, you know, certain podcasts and, you know, attending certain virtual events and, you know, making it look like we're totally engrossed in education all the time? Now, if I've ever come across as being engrossed in education all the time, I apologize. I love education. I hold education on a pedestal, but I do not think about education nonstop 24/7, 365. There are other things in my life. There's Caitlin. There's my 2 children, other family and friends, people who I talk to who have nothing to do with teaching or education technology or podcasting. Sure, education and podcasting and all these things have opened the doors to relationships, but that's not all I'm about. Now, granted, in this podcast, you get a little bit of who I am outside of all the ed tech and everything because I want to be authentic. I want to be transparent. Those are important to me. So that way you get to know me, you like me, you trust me, and we have a relationship. Even if you and I have never spoken on Twitter or by email or anything like that, you still let me into your head. You and I still have an intimate relationship where you hear my words. Now, I understand that from year to year and from school year to school year, as teachers, as administrators, whatever your role, again, we do need to prepare for the next school year. And I need to prep as much as the next person. But I need a break. Now, if you don't think you need a break, I'm going to give you permission to take a break, to slow down, to even stop. What's my summer going to consist of? My wife, my kids, family. Sure, plans we had for actual travel. We had a great trip to go to Legoland in New York, to the brand new Legoland Resort. I'm looking at the ticket hanging on the wall here in the House of EdTech. That trip isn't happening. I love Lego. My kids are starting to love Lego. I'm super disappointed that I can't go to Legoland, but that's not going to stop me from relaxing and enjoying life because I have my family, fortunate enough to have my health, even though with the CrossFit, I'm if you didn't know, still doing CrossFit, still kicking my own butt 3 or 4 days a week. Those are other things that are important. Doing projects around the house, the DIY stuff, the garage of EdTech, which I talk about from time to time here and, on Instagram and stuff like that. I hope you slow down. I hope you consider stopping. Yeah, you're going to go to the beach. You might get to do day trips, but take a break from education. Slow down. Stop. Skip a Twitter chat. Consider maybe not listening to this podcast over the summer. I don't know, or other podcasts. Or maybe open yourself up to exploring new content and new podcasts. Consider pursuing, and I know I've talked about this before, pursue a passion. Try and do and be something different when you're not in school. If you've ever thought to yourself, man, I would love to connect with my students, but I don't have anything to talk about. Well, think about the things that you do that you would bring in. I know that I try to connect with my students and learn about them and find out what they're interested in and what they like, what they don't like. So that way we can have conversations. I know I've talked about the human element being absent from education, and, more often than not, I witness it being absent between how administrators and teachers interact with each other. And with that being said, I'm actually going to demonstrate something for you right now. I'm sitting here recording this podcast just in the middle of the content, and my wife and my kids were out at my mother-in-law's house, and now they're home. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to come back after I've spent some time with them, and I'm going to continue the episode. So you're not going to notice a gap, but I will be right back. And just like that, 6.5 hours later, I'm back. So in the time that I was gone, although instant for you, 6.5 hours for me, played some Nintendo Switch with the kids, barbecued a little bit. So already starting to feel the full effects of summer here in the House of EdTech. So let's kind of wrap up the featured content here as we talk about slowing down here in the summer. So this summer, I am still going to be learning. Okay? You are still going to learn. But again, this might sound corny. I don't care. But it's true. Take some time. I'm going to daydream. One of my projects here to start the summer is going to be to build a hammock stand, because unfortunately the estate here is uneven, and I don't have two great trees, or I want to get my hands dirty. But and that's neither here nor there. Daydream. Do anything but education. We recently did an episode about anything but education for Podcast PD, where AJ and I talked about our favorite sports movies and our favorite mafia movies. And summer is a great time to, catch up on movies and TV shows and, putz around a little bit. Yeah, I know it's important to be productive and, make the most of your day. But when I reflect back on the year that was, I could really use some time to do nothing other than, worry about my wife and play with my kids and, what's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and not really put too much stress on the brain. Now, I know this isn't the greatest ed tech topic, but part of being passionate about education technology is also knowing when to kind of put down the device. And that I struggle with that. You probably struggle with that from time to time. And that's okay. We just need to be aware and realize that here, when we don't have to teach or be an administrator or do what we do normally, that it's okay. If you don't feel comfortable giving yourself permission to slow down and even stop some things, let me give you permission. It's okay. Slow down, stop. It's going to be just fine. So I don't have much more to say other than slow down and stop. That's pretty much the message of this episode as we get into, the off season of education. And there needs to be an off season. We can't go 24/7, 365, even though at times, even I will say that teaching is a 24/7, 365 thing. You never take your teacher hat off. But I think we can make the conscious effort and be intentional about taking off our teacher hats in the summer and, let the learning come to us as it comes, and let's just enjoy the experiences that we're able to have in the time that we have. That's the featured content. And if you want to share your summer plans, let me throw it out there again this year. I know travel is going to be a little light, but I remember last year I put out the call to send me a postcard based on wherever you might be traveling from. And Derek Larson traveled what seems like the whole middle of the country and sent me a bunch of postcards. And I remember sharing Derek's postcards here on the podcast. And I want to put that challenge out again. If you do any traveling, or maybe you happen to be someplace where you live that you can pick up a postcard, I would love to get a postcard from you. And just let me know how you're doing. And I think that would be really fun to share the postcards on Instagram at House of EdTech and on Twitter at Mr. Nessie at House of EdTech. And I think that would be really fun. So if you want to send me a postcard, get a pen or pencil, or just remember at this point in the episode to come back and get my address, and you can send postcards this summer to me. So Chris Nessie, you can do care of the House of EdTech. It doesn't matter. This is my home address, but Chris Nessie, 205 McDermott Road, Neptune, New Jersey, 07753. I would love to get some postcards from you, and I'll be sharing them as I get them. So that'll be fun. The message is slow down, stop, and send me a postcard. Let's go to the Just Give It a Try segment. So normally, Just Give It a Try is where I turn the show over to you because you've gone to chrisnessie.com/feedback or chrisnessie.com/flipgrid, and you have shared something that you've done in your school or your classroom that you're either going to share a success or a setback or even a failure of something you tried in your role in education. But for this segment, I want to share something new. So it's kind of like a recommendation, but it's kind of like, hey, when it happens, just give it a try. So Twitter just got an update this week as I'm recording this episode, and you can now post audio tweets. Yeah, it's really cool. Now, it's only for iOS, coming soon to Android, although if you're listening to this well into the future, maybe this is already available on the Twitter app on Android. But that's neither here nor there as I'm speaking right now. So what you can do is when you go to post a tweet on iOS, if you have access to it and it's slowly rolling out, and I, for some reason, have been blessed with access to this already. Maybe they know I'm a podcaster and I like to use my voice. But if you have access to it, you'll go make sure you have the latest version of the Twitter mobile app and go to compose a tweet. And above your keyboard in iOS, where you normally see maybe some thumbnails of pictures you can upload or the camera icon, you will see what looks like a WAV file. So you'll see 3 purple lines. I'm guessing it's going to be 3 purple lines for you as it is for me. And that represents audio. When you tap that, you can then record. I haven't tested the limit, but the longest one I've posted so far is 2 minutes. And this is going to change the game on Twitter, because how many times have you ever written an email or a text, or you've just written something, and just because you wrote it down, it was misunderstood, right? Or your tone didn't come across, or, the inflection or the emphasis doesn't come across when we type, other than when we use emojis and capital letters and GIFs. So with an audio tweet, you can now put your voice out there. And this might also be the first step you take to maybe consider creating a podcast. Maybe you start by putting out audio tweets. That Sat Chat I told you about, the questions I was able to participate in, I did all audio tweets. I didn't type out my responses. And I'm able to see how many people listen to the audio tweets. And it's really cool to get those analytics and see how many people are actually hearing my words. So I think this is going to be a game changer in Twitter chats. I thought that maybe live streaming and moving away from typing out questions would happen. And I still think that that'll happen at some point. But maybe now on Twitter, you can do, A1 semicolon, put the date, and then put in your audio tweet. So that way you can just answer the questions and people can hear your voice. And the cool thing is, the whole thing is cool, but what I also noticed is that when you play back somebody's audio tweet, you can continue to interact with Twitter, and you get on the bottom of your screen a little player that's kind of a part of the app, and you can keep scrolling and, do stuff. So what I've learned so far also with this is it's only for your initial tweet. You can't reply to somebody's tweet with an audio tweet or your own tweets. So when you compose a brand new tweet, you will soon have the ability to post audio. And when this happens, just give it a try and let me know what you think. Maybe tag me at Mr. Nessie in your first audio tweet. I would love to hear your voice if I've never communicated with you personally. So I think that would be really cool. And if you have something that you have tried this school year, again, this segment is always open and here for you to contribute to. just go to chrisnessy.com/feedback or chrisnessy.com/flipgrid, and you can share something that you tried in your school or your classroom. And now it's time to meet this episode's House of EdTech VIP, and I want to introduce you to Teresa Scoggins. That's Teresa Scoggins, Scoggins. She can be found on Twitter at Teresa Scoggins. I will link to that in the show notes. Teresa is an instructional technology coach from Cleveland, Tennessee. She is a Google Level 2 certified educator, and she is also a Symbaloo certified educator. So if you are not connected with Teresa already, make sure you go to chrisnessy.com/158 and click on the link to Teresa's Twitter profile, connect with Teresa, and start to learn from Teresa as I have. And Teresa, congratulations, because you are a House of EdTech VIP. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you for checking out the House of EdTech. As always, if you are not yet subscribed to the podcast, please consider clicking that subscribe button. Thanks again for joining me for another installment of Anytime, Anywhere Professional Development. This summer, I will continue to do this podcast. We will also be continuing to do Podcast PD, so just make sure you are subscribed to both and consider coming out every other Sunday as we go to the every 2-week format for Podcast PD, because we do broadcast that live. So you can go to podcastpd.com for more information about that. As for this episode, I would love to continue this conversation with you about slowing down and stopping and what you're doing this summer. And you know how to connect with me. If not, go to chrisnessy.com/158 to leave a comment on the show notes, or go to chrisnessy.com/feedback. And you'll see all the different ways that you can send me an audio message or a text message. And you know, that's what we do here. If you enjoy the podcast, and if you get this far in my episodes, you must. Do me a favor. Tell somebody else about the podcast. Go call your friend on the phone. Go near somebody and still stay 6 feet apart. Share it on social media. # House of EdTech. Tell somebody else about the show, because word of mouth is the best way to share a podcast you love. And if you can't share mine right now, share another one that you enjoy. All podcasts need a little love. Speaking of love, you can also show some love for the podcast by becoming an awesome supporter. Many thanks to my awesome supporters, which is powered by patreon.com, which allows a consumer of content like you to support a creator of content like me. I want to shout out my awesome supporters right here, right now. Congratulations for supporting me. Thank you to Carlos Garza, Anthony Arnaud, Dan Gallagher, Jeff Herb, JP Presevento, Kyle Wilcox, Mike Messner, and Peggy George. If you go on the show notes for any episode, you can get links to their content and their Twitter handles and their podcasts. So there you go. If you're in a position to support the podcast, you know, you can donate as little as, I think, $2 an episode or $3 an episode, something like that. So if you get value from the show, consider supporting what I'm doing here. And you can do that by going to chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the podcast will be episode 159, and that's going to come your way on July 5th, 2020. Until next time, you know the deal. But thank you for learning with me. And remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. And slow down. Stop. Go do something fun.